Leonardo.
Many people said at the Viper Room that the crowd was more famous than the bands, and that was absolutely true.
The Viper Room, a West Hollywood night spot frequented by celebrities.
There was a lot of velvet rope going on at that club.
Hey, looking nice.
Johnny Depp could be telling the person at the door, let that person in, don't let that other person in.
Everyone was sneezing fame all over each other.
Christina Aguilera,
David Arquette, Charlize Theron, Christina Applegate.
I met Jennifer Aniston there.
If you could just get inside, you could let your hair down.
Hidden away from fans and paparazzi, the shadowy corners and back rooms of the Viper Room are also a new safe place to indulge in an old and dangerous vice.
Suddenly heroin started flowing into LA.
It felt like we were living through like an epidemic when you have friend after friend die.
An investigation is underway into the sudden death of one of Hollywood's brightest young stars.
I opened the door to Sunset Strip and I looked down and I saw who it was and I was like shocked.
Is your brother's having a seizure?
Yes.
How old is he?
He's 23.
23? Okay, you know telephone number?
He must be from here to Viper Room.
Okay, Viper Room.
As time goes on, people get remembered for like one thing. 50 years from now, the Viper Room, it's the place where River Phoenix died.
23-year-old River Phoenix collapsed outside a Los Angeles nightclub early this morning.
Witnesses say he appeared high on drugs.
Fans have been gathering outside the nightclub where the 23-year-old actor collapsed and died on early Sunday.
I think the 90s Viper Room, without a doubt, it's intertwined fully with the death of River Phoenix. That's, I think, what most people would know about it.
The Viper Room might have been a lot more underground for a lot longer if River hadn't passed away. That was a big thing that made it infamous, maybe, instead of famous.
When it's all said and done, I hope the Viper Room is remembered for something other than River Phoenix, because it was so much more to a lot of people.
One reason that the Viper Room is so important to people has to do with the street it's located on.
The Sunset Strip is an area of Sunset Boulevard, which is one of the truly longest streets in Los Angeles. It goes from East LA to the ocean. My name is Pleasant Gaiman. I'm a writer and performer, and I spent 4 decades of my life hanging around on the Sunset Strip. I'm a Hollywood icon. Kiss the hem of my dress. Since the late 30s and early 40s, the Sunset Strip was always populated by a lot of nightclubs. Some of them are legendary in rock and roll circles.
In the early 90s, you had the Whiskey A Go-Go, the Roxy, and those were like prestige places. And then Gazzari's, which was catering to a heavy metal crowd.
There's Guns N' Roses. They're the band of the 90s.
Did you like the new material? Or?
I loved it.
Guns N' Roses were the biggest band in the world, and they came out of the Sunset Strip. My name is Randall Slavin, and I'm a photographer, and I've been taking pictures for as long as I can remember and compiled some of my favorites in a book called We All Want Something Beautiful. Everything was heavy metal. A lot of Harleys and hairspray and fishnets.
But that begins to change. A new sound can be heard on the Sunset Strip, and it'll set the stage for the Viper Room.
Coming out of the 80s, which was one of the most debauched times ever, and even into the early 90s, there was a lot of musical things going on.
When Jane's Addiction came in the early 90s, that was the new wave. They were cool and they were different and younger and felt like a whole different kinds of energy. And that's when things changed.
But it was a moment where You know, sort of like, yes, this is the non-hair metal alternative that we've been looking for.
In the early 90s, the grunge movement invades the Sunset Strip on its way to changing rock and roll. But it's changing Hollywood too, as many young actors fall under its spell.
There was a lot of people that had been involved in one facet of show business, as in movies or television, who were now exploring rock and roll. Like I remember Juliette Lewis had a band for a long time. Jared Leto was always playing in bands.
Other actors who dabble in music are Keanu Reeves with Dog Star, River Phoenix as frontman for Alakazam, and Johnny Depp with his band P.
With both River Phoenix and Johnny Depp, they originally started off like thinking they were going to do music.
How you doing tonight, Johnny?
And then they discovered, oh, I'm really good at this other thing.
Johnny Depp wasn't the biggest movie star in the world. He wasn't Jack Sparrow, but he was on a long-running TV show, 21 Jump Street. But in Hollywood, in that time, being cool was just as important as being a big movie star, and he was very cool.
Johnny? Yeah.
At the height of grunge, in 1993, Johnny Depp buys the Central, a dirty little live music club in the heart of the Sunset Strip.
The Central was a dive. It was just a place to play.
By the time that Johnny Depp bought the Central and changed the name to the Viper Room, I think there was a couple of different camps going on because the Central had been a really popular club. And so the people that played it thought it was going to turn into like what would now be known as an A-list venue, you know, snobbish and not rock and roll enough.
The Central was also the spot where singer-songwriter Chucky Weiss played. You may not know him, but Johnny Depp was a big fan.
When they're getting ready to sell the Central, and that was going to be the end of Chucky's gig. And I think half the reason Johnny bought the place was to keep a club open so Chucky could play.
When Johnny came in and took it over, it became this special sort of like cool underground kind of like almost like a speakeasy, you know, which he obviously was very into. And the biggest, most gigantic rock stars were coming to perform at this little tiny club of only 200 people. I mean, you couldn't fit any more than 200 people in this nightclub, and that is packed.
And like for opening night, you know, sort of like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers owe me a favor, so they'll like play the opening gig. And because it's this small room, it becomes this like little celebrity clubhouse. Literally, they didn't have to let in anyone that they didn't want to.
There was this sudden new renaissance of young Hollywood people that just wanted to go out and have fun. And in some places, they couldn't.
Leonardo, tell us about Johnny.
What do you want to tell
We just want you to tell us how much fun it was working with Johnny.
Great.
Come on.
Johnny Depp could be in his office looking at the camera, telling the person at the door, let that person in, don't let that other person in.
Hey, good to see you. Hey, looking nice.
The reason the Viper Room became a haven for famous people is because of how protected they felt. There was definitely a sense of like, if you could just get inside, you could let your hair down.
There were just fame spraying. Like everyone was sneezing fame all over each other. It was just a lot of famous people. And they were all cool. And it was like we were all in this room together and we just got to hang out and talk.
Inside the Viper Room was very insular and very protected. And famous people were no different than everyone else inside because you weren't the only famous person in there.
That was the only game in town for young Hollywood. They were hanging out there trying to elude fame while at the same time their very appearance there was what caused so many people to flock to the Viper Room. It was like its own little secret, giant 5-story high lime green neon air quotes hideaway for famous people.
The same month the Viper Room opens its doors, a little band called Counting Crows finally hits it big, and their lead singer, Adam Duritz, is immediately welcomed into the Viper's inner sanctum.
Well, I could talk for hours, but sitting there staring at a camera makes my skin crawl. But she's a very nice girl, you know?
The secret sauce of the Viper Room was you had the coolest actor in Hollywood who was dating the coolest girl in the world, who is Kate Moss, and he wants a place to hang out, and they don't need to make money.
With Viper, Johnny Depp creates a bubble for his cool A-lister friends where they can feel sheltered. But it's just a matter of time before that bubble bursts.
Get out of the way! I can't see! They got it.
We have reports from Paris that Diana, Princess of Wales, has been killed in a car accident, and that her partner, Dodi Fayed, has also been killed. They were apparently being pursued by paparazzi on 2 motorcycles.
Killed by the royal family or hit by a...
The paparazzi spends the 90s hunting down Hollywood royalty before killing an actual member of the royal family in 1997.
How you doing, Sean? Shouldn't you guys be out killing a princess somewhere?
Yeah, we did that already.
But Diana's death was the unhappy ending to a story that begins much earlier in the decade.
That was the very, very beginning of the tabloids being revamped from like stuff like soap operas into young Hollywood. I mean, that sort of started around that time, you know? And it was because there was such a new guard coming up in Hollywood, and they were people that were going out. They weren't sheltered.
You can turn that off, man. Come on. All right.
The studios weren't controlling people the way they had in the golden age of Hollywood.
And that's when it all of a sudden became a big business, selling pictures of people coming in and out of a nightclub.
It hadn't been like that since maybe like the Beatles landed, you know, for the first time in America. There wasn't like legions of screaming fans and a bunch of paparazzi again until the early 90s.
There were a ton of paparazzi then, everywhere you went, especially in a town like LA. That was seriously unpleasant.
No.
You guys need to back up. I can't see the cars.
Okay, back up, guys. You can't see the cars.
They got it. Out of the way! I can't see! There are cars there! Get out of the way!
They're stopped.
While the flashbulbs and prying eyes of the paparazzi ravage most of Hollywood in the mid-90s, Johnny Depp's Viper Room remains mostly immune.
The paparazzi at the Viper Room was always just 1 or 2 guys. This guy, Woody and Brian.
It was like a clubhouse, but the club was open to everybody, you know, and even the paparazzi seemed to appreciate it for what it was. And it was pretty casual that way. Definitely makes a huge difference that it was pre-social media, because people were willing to let themselves go in ways that it's not smart to now.
Not just pre-social media, but pre-everyone having a digital camera right inside their cell phones.
Johnny Depp was making a valiant attempt to protect the young and famous, or the up-and-comers, or the arty A-listers of rock stars and movie stars and TV stars.
It's video camera. Please. Let him get it.
He was wanting to create a safe haven for them.
As the Sunset Strip continues to be full of rock clubs, the Viper Room is much more than just another place to hear live music.
I mean, I think every club has bands, but like the thing that made the Viper Room special were the other things they did that were just fun. You know, they would do theme nights that must have cost a fortune, and were only up for 1 night.
They would have like a dating game night. David Arquette from the Arquette acting family would be the bachelor.
I remember once they covered the entire inside of the place with tinfoil.
They would do these shows like Everyone would dress up, and it'd be like an old school burlesque night. You know, act like you were in a different time for a little while.
I remember they did an Alice in Wonderland night. That was incredible. The whole place done up in an Alice in Wonderland theme. And I remember going up, and all of a sudden, you get to the top, and it's Timothy Leary is on stage reading from Alice in Wonderland.
Why, sometimes I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast.
Surrounded by a bunch of giant toadstools in this, like, glow-in-the-dark club, and he's reading from Alice in Wonderland. And you're like, how did this happen? How is this happening? And, like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Outside the Viper Room, celebrities are on their own. But inside, it's a safe space to explore their creativity.
I remember like some of the real burlesque club nights too, like when Christina Applegate had this group of friends and they had a really cool burlesque show and they were called the Pussycat Dolls.
Christina Applegate was on Married with Children at the time, and she had a housemate named Robin who was a choreographer.
I'm Robin Anton. I'm the founder of the Pussycat Dolls, which started at the Viper Room in 1994. I was creating this little show in Christina's garage at like midnight with a couple of my friends. Christina would come down and go like, what, you know, like, this is so cool. And I'm like, you should be in it, because Christina was a dancer. And a lot of people didn't know that about her, that she had this talent as a real trained dancer.
Of course, where else were they going to do it but at the Viper Room? That was their hang.
So we went and we auditioned for Johnny at the club. We got on stage, put on our corsets and our, you know, and our whole garb, everything that I had made. And it was perfect because right on the chorus was when we did the strip. You blow a fuse, zing, boom, strip another corset, zing, boom, down to another corset, dun, dun, dun. And then we'd take a glove off and take a glove off. And I remember he was just like looking at us going, these girls are crazy and wild and outrageous, and this is so cool, you know? And we're just throwing all the clothes off into the audience.
There was layers and bustiers under bustiers and shorter shorts under frilly shorts.
It was like literally a strip tease. So we didn't really strip down to nothing. And I remember Johnny saying, this is exactly why I opened the Viper Room. He said, I would love for this to be a show at the Viper Room, like once a week, maybe? I mean, can you do it? And so the next thing we knew, you know, we were on stage at the Viper Room for like 8 years.
They were lip syncing to old songs, and the place went bananas. The place went crazy.
Everybody would hear about it, from the cast of Friends to, you know, Marilyn Manson to, you know, Jimmy Iovine was there, and Ron Fair, and Dr. Dre was coming around, Hugh Hefner. I mean, it was just wild. Like the people that would show up to the show, that would be in the audience.
It grew, and then I think Carmen Electra was the first sort of regular famous member.
We felt like we were celebrating being women up there. I mean, that was the beginning of female empowerment as I knew it.
I'm loving it.
And that's when all of these label heads were coming down to check it out and see what's going on.
And the Pussycat Dolls outgrew the Viper Room and then started performing at other clubs and other places, and then they got a record deal and then became a multi-platinum international pop group. Crazy.
While the Pussycat Dolls are killing it on the Viper Room stage, an even deadlier act shows up in town.
A dangerous drug has dropped like a bomb on the streets of the suburbs. It's heroin.
It started off a little slowly, but then it just hit like a sledgehammer. Everyone had been doing coke, you know, I mean, that was huge in the 70s, and LA was kind of the coke capital.
But by 1993, a drug that has fallen out of favor is back in vogue and will help define the decade.
Suddenly heroin started flowing into LA.
Heroin has made a major comeback, particularly within the music world, where it is the chic drug of choice for some rock musicians.
Kurt Cobain, Courtney Love, Kelly Deal of the Breeders, Steve Adler of Guns N' Roses have all abused heroin.
In LA, as in other places, heroin was ascendant.
It's everywhere. You can get it easier than pot.
It's hard to really explain how rampant heroin was in Hollywood. It was like Hollywood turned into a zombie town suddenly, so many people. It was so easy to get, and it was so ubiquitous. It was really scary.
As emergency rooms are flooded with victims of bad heroin, many are arriving violent and disoriented.
It felt like we were living through an epidemic. Sort of when you have friend after friend die.
You could always kind of tell if someone was doing heroin if the door to the dressing room was locked. That could be the Viper Room, that could be any club that you'd go to, because normally there wouldn't be a lock on the door if someone was just doing blow.
It was a drug that was very easy if you took a wrong step. You didn't just have a bad hangover the next day, you would be dead.
For some new stars of Hollywood and rock and roll, heroin becomes a perfect escape from the pressures of their newfound fame. For others, it's a way to cope with demons that have been there all along.
Radio stations nationwide offered tribute to Kurt Cobain as young fans mourn the rock singer's apparent suicide in Seattle.
Many people over 30 probably never heard of Kurt Cobain, but for younger fans, his music captured the spirit of the difficult transition from youth to maturity.
It was obvious this man is dead from a shotgun wound to the head. Now, there was a suicide note left inside.
I'm sitting there waiting to be interviewed for Rolling Stone, and I got a call from a guy who used to be our A&R guy, who signed us, who signed Nirvana. Me and Kurt were like his little brothers, and Kurt died.
Anyway.
Where are you from?
CBS.
It was weeks after Kurt killed himself.
See you, Courtney. God love you, babe.
I remember being at the Viper Room. It was after hours, and it was only a few of us sitting downstairs. And myself, Courtney, and my friend Michael Stipe. She was a mess. She was a mess talking about it. And she was trying to rewrite what had happened and trying to, we should have done this and we could have done that, and if we'd only done this. And I remember Michael just being trying to console this sobbing widow. It was a really heavy, heavy night. And I think it's a testament to the atmosphere that she felt safe there and protected by the Viper Room.
I mean, it really shook me up because I didn't think we were all that different in a lot of ways.
Adam's first album with Counting Crows becomes a 7 times platinum hit and the fastest selling record since Nirvana's Nevermind. But Adam and Kurt have an even more profound connection.
You know, I wasn't talking about it publicly then, but I had pretty severe mental illness, and I knew that. So, you know, the things that had concerned me before that morning concerned me a lot more after that morning.
Adam was having a really hard time being famous. And when your little cool band becomes the cover of Rolling Stone, people are gonna rebel against it because it's not theirs anymore, it's everyone's.
Everywhere I went, it was an issue. Sometimes just like we love you, sometimes we hate you, but an issue everywhere. I felt very exposed. Anonymity, you don't realize what a shield it is until it's gone. One night, I got a phone call from Johnny from the office at the Viper. It's Kate Moss's 21st birthday tonight. The Viper's closed and we're having a party. You need to get down here now. And we went to the Viper Room, and I never really went home again. Pretty soon, I just started bartending every night because I made insane tips for the people that worked there. I didn't keep them, but I would go there every night and just work bartending. I was trying to, get a little space.
I think the Viper Room was a real refuge, a real place they could go in and feel safe. And also, Adam ain't the most famous dude running around the Viper Room. And that's a big weight off your shoulders. And everyone loved Adam, and Adam's a lovable guy, and he's not a dick, so they liked having him around. And it was cool to have the guy who's on the cover of Rolling Stone, serving you Amstel Lights. And it added to the coolness of the Viper Room.
I wasn't comfortable. The whole world had turned uncomfortable for me. The Viper Room gave me a home at a time when I really needed one. Another way of saying it gave me a second shot at life.
For some stars, the Viper's legacy will always be the safety they felt inside its walls. But its infamy comes from what happens just outside on Sunset Boulevard.
To happen right in front of the Viper Room was like, oh my God, this is just never gonna, be forgotten.
At Pittsfield High School, it is wildly unpopular. A new dress code passed by the school committee last night, 5-1. It prohibits the wearing of what the committee describes as anything depicting illegal acts, provocative dress, profanity, gangs, drugs, or violence.
It's wrong. Why? Because we should be allowed to wear whatever we want.
The 90s are a time of transition when youth culture is re-envisioning the world with the tenacity not seen since the counterculture movement in the 60s.
The people who were young in the 90s felt culturally disaffected and, sort of like, what is going on with the system that we don't feel like we fit into? A lot of people were trying to tear down the archetypes that existed before. This is what a blockbuster Hollywood movie is. This is what like a mega successful like rock band is. It's all kind of up for grabs and people are figuring it out. River in many ways was the grungy version of a movie star. He has this attitude and appearance, and sometimes it explicitly crosses over that, sort of like he hangs out with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, becomes great friends with Flea.
I like to say that River was a musician with a damn good day job. And it's his day job that made him rich and famous, but his music was always his heart. My name is Sasa Hasid Ra. I'll do a little dance for you. My relationship with River was primarily as a friend and as a little brother, but also developed into a musical relationship where we produced amazing music together and wrote some really beautiful songs.
I'll probably be in the Bay Area playing local underground clubs.
I think River was pretty laid back in the way that he dealt with Hollywood. It's not like he was always eager to try to get the most blockbuster movie and to try to get all of these contracts. He was more interested in the artistic expression of film and acting.
How old were you then when you started? 10.
Was that so?
Mm-hmm. Television commercials, and then later you get cast in a film if you're lucky.
Mm-hmm. You're a natural.
I'm not saying anything.
I'm saying it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I thought you did a wonderful performance in that movie.
River Phoenix gets his big break in the coming-of-age classic Stand By Me. And although he goes on to accept roles in studio films with Robert Redford and Harrison Ford, he feels more at home on indie art productions like My Own Private Idaho.
They could drop a big old bomb in this city, you know what we would do? Take shelter.
Where he acts alongside other young voices like Keanu Reeves and his friend, Flea.
And actually, one of the Chili Peppers songs, Give It Away. Give it away, give it away, give it away now. There's an interesting verse in that is like dedicated to River that most people don't know. But that first verse, there's a river that's always a giver. Keep you warm, won't ever let you shiver. Yeah, that's like about River because he was so generous. He was such a generous he's always a giver.
A lot of it was sort of like caretaker for the earth. And so you have this sense of like River Phoenix cares about the dolphins and he cares about animals and his dogs. And he believes in the rainforest. And he's like, in many ways, could serve as movie fans' introduction to larger social issues.
Like a handful of other young stars at the time, River starts using heroin as a way to cope with the pressures of his success.
I don't do television. I don't want to sit there and be a puppet and you become more of like a speaking piece for their show than your own film. And so then you have shows all the time showing clips of the film, speaking about the film. You don't have, and then we talk to the actor, Rubber Penis, and you know, I sit down and like, yeah, and then like, yeah, I had a fun time doing this project. Yeah, it's just stupid, man. It's just a waste of time. It bores me. And it scares the shit out of me too, to be frank.
To be in front of a camera?
Oh, it's so frightening.
I had seen River Phoenix a few months earlier. I didn't know it was River Phoenix at first. He was sprawled in the middle of the back little corridor. And I was like, who is that really cute and really up boy? And someone said, that's River Phoenix. And I was like, that's River Phoenix?
Me, you got me one, Scott? A glass of wine would be good.
He's got addiction problems, and at a certain point, he's going to have to deal with this.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what.
He would clean out and dry out when he was making a movie. For example, his last movie, it was Dark Blood, and it was filmed in the desert. And he sort of showed up straight and going for like long hikes. And when he got away from LA, he was able to not have people feeding him cocaine. And it's like, here's what you need.
That's why I don't hang out and talk to those Hollywood people, because they're there to hurt me. They're there to hurt my views.
And he actually said to the director, George Sluizer, when the filming shifted from the desert to LA, he said, I'm going back to the bad, bad town. This is where temptation is for me. River gets to town and he pretty much immediately falls off the wagon. He's out of it. There's sort of meetings he's supposed to take with directors where he's, slurring his words and calls up his agent. They can tell within 24 hours he's in bad shape. Samantha Mathis, his girlfriend, is there. Two of his siblings are there as well, Joaquin Phoenix and his sister Rain. His siblings, they want to go out to the Viper Room. It's the hot club in town. They're curious. He's going to stay and just sort of have a quiet night so he's in good shape for tomorrow's shooting. You guys go have a good time at the Viper Room. His girlfriend's going to take his siblings there. And as they're heading out the room and going to the elevator, he changes his mind. Okay, let's go, and runs after them into the night.
I got a call from Spin magazine, whom I was writing for in those days. Will you go and cover this band at the Viper Room? I went there and the line was just insane. Everybody wanted to get in that night because there was a special band playing. It was kind of a super group, and it was called P, the initial P.
P was Johnny Depp's band that included Gibby Haynes from the Butthole Surfers. Also sitting in that night was River's friend, Flea.
I went into the club, and it was already packed. I went to the dressing room, which was what I always did, but the door was pretty much locked. People that knew me inside the dressing room at the Viper Room on that night weren't letting me in. I knew what was going on in there.
It's a crowded, dark room, and there's a lot of conflicting versions of what happened. It's possible that most of them are true and different people saw different things happen and it all added up. The version that I heard from a friend of his was somebody walked up to the table and then gave him this cup and says, "Drink this, you'll feel great." And River does and downs it and almost immediately starts to feel like there's something in the drink that's starting to send his body into convulsions.
I watched a few songs of P. It was humid, it was sweaty, and it was super smoky. I was like, I can't stand this anymore. So I opened the door to Sunset Strip and I almost tripped over paramedics resuscitating someone. I mean, I literally almost tripped. It was happening right in front of the door. Then I looked down, as one would naturally do, and I saw who it was, and I was like shocked.
Okay, calm down a little bit, okay? What's the address where you need us?
It's Sunset and Larrabee. It's at the Viper Room.
Okay, what's the address there, do you know?
What's the address? Come on!
Okay, sir? So calm down a little bit, okay?
I'm sorry, it's my brother. Please come here.
There's this heartbreaking tape of his brother Joaquin, sort of like losing his mind because his brother is dying in front of him.
Where's your brother right now?
He's laying on the cement.
Is he breathing?
I don't know. The last I checked, they said he was breathing. Is he breathing? I don't know if he's breathing. Please, he can't get over here.
He's like on the sidewalk right in front of the Viper Room. He's having seizures. His sister is lying on top of his body, trying to sort of settle down and stop him from hurting himself as he flails around.
She's trying to give him mouth to mouth. Please get over here, please.
Calm down, okay?
I think he has volume or something. I don't know. Let's get over here, please.
Yeah, slow down, okay?
Well, where is the guy? Where the are they, Please, because he's dying, please.
Sir, slow down, okay?
Okay, what?
This tape gets played over and over in the aftermath, and this is the moment when America met Joaquin Phoenix, when at the lowest point of his life, his brother who he loved and worshipped and looked up to is dying in front of him.
Seeing the first responders with defibrillators and with an oxygen mask on and with girls screaming and crying on the sidewalk. I have tears in my eyes right now. That was a traumatic thing. I didn't talk about that for a long time. It's not nice to witness someone dying like that.
The band that was playing finishes their set, and they hear, a friend of Flea's is having a bad time, and so they come out, and Flea sees what's happening and rides in the ambulance to the hospital, and they take him to Cedars-Sinai, and they work for about half an hour before they clear that he's dead. But he died there on the sidewalk outside the Viper Room.
An investigation is underway into the sudden death of one of Hollywood's brightest young stars. 23-year-old River Phoenix collapsed outside a Los Angeles nightclub early this morning.
The actor's brother says he might have taken drugs before he died.
Toxicology results came back. The findings were that he was found to have cocaine and heroin. It metabolizes as morphine in the body, and there were very high levels.
It was very difficult when River passed. Joaquin and I, we didn't ever talk about the specifics of that night. It was too painful, I think. But we cried a lot. We cried a lot together, an ocean of tears. And he was such a beautiful boy, and he definitely left, way too young. Too young to die, for sure.
By the late 90s, a new breed of celebrity invades the Sunset Strip. And for those who found safety behind the Viper Room's walls, everything is about to change.
Reality TV kind of came around and changed a lot of what fame was in America.
Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
The goal is that one day every home in America will have a special cable box. We will hook up our computer, our telephone, our video camera, and our TV to that one box.
In the late 90s, the internet matures from chat rooms and pay-per-view porn into a powerful media tool that's altering our very concept of what it means to be famous. And nowhere is that transformation more evident than on LA's Sunset Strip.
Every generation felt that their generation was better than the generation that came after them. And that just happens every generation. But there is a definite line in the sand with a pre-internet and a post-internet. And that's the big demarcation. I don't remember any actors in the 90s referring to themselves as a brand.
I don't like LA as much anymore. It's not what it was then. It really turned into a town where there were a lot of people who got famous for being famous. And a lot of the sons and daughters of really rich people, you know, and famous people. That started to be like a real thing in LA.
When we got the 90s were the last era where it was really uncool to like being famous. I think that era is long gone. Fame used to be the unfortunate byproduct of being really good at something, whereas I think now with a lot of people coming up, fame is the end goal.
With this new breed of celebrity taking over the Strip, Johnny Depp finally sells off the Viper Room in 2004. Although the name stays the same, the vibe does not. And soon the Hollywood royalty stops showing up.
I haven't been to the Viper Room lately, meaning in the past few years. I constantly say that I am not in rock and roll anymore, and people roll their eyes at me.
I can't really say when my sort of Viper days drew to a close, because by the time you realize, oh, I haven't been there in a while. Huh. I guess it's over. The Viper Room wasn't the Viper Room anymore. Those golden hours don't last forever. It's only an hour. You know, commerce catches up to everything. And now the Viper Room is going to be bulldozed and a hotel is going to be erected in that space, and then it'll be gone forever.
Yeah, I mean, we all have to grow up with that. You go to the places that you grew up going to see shows, and they're not there anymore.
I have lifelong friends because of the Viper Room that I met at the Viper Room and grew to love at the Viper Room. So you just have to be appreciative of what you had and the time you had, because you can't get that back.
The Viper Room gave me a home at a time when I needed one, and it gave me a place to be an artist again. I would treasure Johnny Depp for the rest of my life because of that. It changed my life, and it was the making of me in some ways, the remaking of me, put it that way.
And he smiled, a genuine, weary smile. Yeah, Del, this time next year, as the credits of their lives rolled in their minds, the yellow van continued its journey through the streets of Peckham. The suitcase was still in the back. The mysteries were still unsolved. But as long as they had each other and a bit of hooky luck, the world was still cushy. Chapter 9, The Ghost of the Sultan. Success, even in its most fleeting form, brought back those old habits. The 50,000 pounds wasn't the 6 million they once held, but in the bleak landscape of bankruptcy, it was a king's ransom. Del immediately began acting like a tycoon again, much to Rodney's annoyance. Managing director Rodney Trotter, Del would announce every time the phone rang, even if it was just a wrong number or a debt collector. One evening, the phone rang with a particularly persistent tone. Rodney, attempting to embrace his new executive persona, adjusted his tie, and picked it up. Trotter's independent traders, managing director speaking. How may I be of assistance? Rodney said, projecting a voice that he hoped sounded like a BBC newsreader. The voice on the other end was deep, gravelly, and heavily accented. I am wishing to speak with managing director. My name is Asif Hazen. I am representative of Sultan of Brunei. Rodney's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Dell, who was busy trying to polish a scratched digital watch with his cuff. Dell, it's the Sultan of Brunei, or his bloke, anyway. Dell froze, his eyes widening. The Sultan, Chateauneuf du Pape, C. Rodney, I told you power was an aphrodisiac. He's probably heard about your brilliant leadership. His Highness has advertisement in newspaper, the voice continued. He would like you to fly to Brunei and be his consultant. Rodney was practically vibrating with excitement. A consultant in Brunei. Well, I'd have to check my diary. Of course, we're very busy with local acquisitions. Dell was whispering frantically in Rodney's ear. Tell him we need a private jet and a golden bidget. But then the voice cracked. A familiar, high-pitched giggle broke through the regal accent. And he wants to know where to start his crappy old three-wheeled van on cold mornings. Ha! Had you going there, didn't I, Dave? The silence in the flat was heavy enough to sink a battle cruiser. It was Mickey Pierce. Rodney slammed the phone down, his face turning a shade of red that matched the cheap wine Dell was drinking. I'm going to kill him. I am actually going to murder Mickey Pierce. Don't worry, Rodders, Dell said, trying to suppress his own grin. He's just jealous. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. And the tough don't listen to skinny little gits with fake accents. Chapter 10, Fantasy Therapy and the Roman G-String. While the business side of the Trotter empire was a roller coaster of fake sultans and real debt, the domestic side was equally chaotic. Cassandra, feeling the strain of their living situation, had suggested fantasy therapy, a way to unload memory baggage by becoming someone else. Memory baggage. Dell had scoffed when he heard about it. I've got baggage, Rodney. It's in the van, and it's full of faulty fire alarms. But for Rodney and Cassandra, it was serious. They had spent an evening writing down their fantasy figures. Cassandra's choice for Rodney had been unexpected. Russell Crowe. Dell asked, peering over Rodney's shoulder as he prepared for the evening. You look more like Spartacus with piles. Rodney was standing in the living room wearing a makeshift toga that looked suspiciously like one of Raquel's old bedsheets. He had leather sandals strapped to his calves and was holding a plastic sword. It's about iconoclastic autosuggestion. Dell, you wouldn't understand, Rodney snapped. Cassandra is going to be a fantasy figure too. We're recreating our mating ritual. I saw you dancing in Monte Carlo once. Dell chuckled. You looked like Billy Elliot with worms. If that's your mating ritual, I'm surprised Damien was ever born. Just then, the door opened and Cassandra walked in. She was dressed as a policewoman, complete with a hat, a baton, and a pair of handcuffs that looked far too professional for a costume shop. "Blimey," Dell whispered, his eyes nearly popping out of his head. "I thought we were being raided. You nearly gave me a Connery. Cassandra." The evening was meant to be private, but in Nelson Mandela House, privacy was a luxury the Trotters couldn't afford. Between Damien running in to ask for a snack and Dell consulting on the phone with Monkey Harris about a consignment of electronic organizers, the romantic atmosphere was as thin as Rodney's toga. "We're going out," Cassandra sighed, grabbing Rodney's arm. "We're going to a club. Anywhere but here." "Very nice," Dell called out as they headed for the door. "But watch out for the real police. Rodney, they might arrest you for crimes against fashion." Chapter 11, The Return to the Rainbow Road. The day of the race shoot arrived. Jonathan Ross was surprisingly contrite in person. Or perhaps he was just terrified that Dell might kick another podium. The studio felt different this time, less like a slaughterhouse and more like a second chance at life. "Look, Derek," Jonathan said backstage, adjusting his colorful tie. "We're incredibly sorry about the raffle confusion. It turns out our researcher had a very confusing afternoon in a shoe shop." Dell, dressed in his finest camel hair coat, waved a dismissive hand. "Don't worry about it, Jonathan. Mon Dieu. Mistakes happen. It's the sign of a big man to admit when he's wrong. Now, about that 50 grand. The taping went surprisingly smoothly. Dell took the money. But when it came to the ultimate gold question, the one worth 100,000 pounds, he looked into the cameras, thought about his family, and thought about the taxman waiting at home. "I'll tell you what we're going to do, Jonathan," Dell said, his voice dropping into its most persuasive range. "We're going to give all the winnings to charity, because that's the kind of people we are." The audience erupted in applause. Rodney, watching from the wings, nearly fainted. "He's doing what?" "Dell, we're bankrupt." But Dell had a plan. He knew that a bankrupt man winning 50,000 pounds would have every penny seized by the Inland Revenue immediately. By donating it, he secured a future appearance fee, a documentary deal with Justin, and a mountain of goodwill that the taxman couldn't touch. Plus, as he whispered to Rodney later, "I've already worked out a way to get a tax rebate on the donation." Chapter 12, Managing Director's First Crisis. Back at Nelson Mandela House, Rodney was taking his new role very seriously. He had purchased a second-hand briefcase and a success motivational calendar. "Right, Dell," Rodney said, clearing a space on the grease-stained kitchen table. "As managing director, I've been looking into our overheads. The van needs a new exhaust. The storage unit rent is up. And we still haven't sold those musical umbrellas that play singing in the rain until the battery dies. Del, who is busy trying to convince a man on the phone that a batch of slightly burnt toasters were actually antique charcoal-infused breakfast stations, looked up. Don't worry about the small stuff, Rodney. I've got a meeting with Monkey Harris. He's got a line on these new electronic organizers. They speak 10 languages. Rotters, you can sell them to anyone, tourists, businessmen, people who've lost their way in Peckham. We don't have the capital. Del, Rodney protested. Capital is just a state of mind, Del replied, tapping his nose. I've ranged a by now. Pay when we've flogged them deal. It's the future of retail, Rodney. It's called C'est la vie marketing. Rodney sighed, realizing that while the title on the door had changed, the man holding the suitcase remained the same. Chapter 14, The Charity Gala and the Taxman's Shadow. The announcement of the Trotter Charitable Foundation, which essentially consisted of the gold, rush winnings, and a few tin cans in the flat, had made Del a minor local celebrity. He was invited to a black tie gala at the Peckham Town Hall to receive a Community Spirit Award. We need to look the part, Rodney, Del insisted, wrestling with a bow tie that looked like it had been salvaged from a shipwreck. We're philanthropists now. We're the big hitters. We're the creme de la menthe. Rodney adjusted his tuxedo, which was to sizes too small, and smelled faintly of mothballs, looked in the mirror. Del, we're still living in a council flat. I'm taking the bus to these executive meetings. How long can we keep this masquerade up? As long as it takes, my son. Del beamed. I've got Justin filming the whole thing for the documentary. That appearance fee alone will cover the interest on the tax debt. The gala was a sea of Peckham's elite, which meant a few local counselors, the owner of the carpet warehouse, and Boyke. Boyke was wearing a white dinner jacket that made him look like a low-budget Bond villain, and was puffing on a cigar the size of a small tree. Ah, Derek, Boyke drawled, his signature nasal laugh echoing through the hall. I heard you'd become a man of the people, giving away 50,000 pounds. Marlene and I thought you'd finally lost your marbles. Or perhaps you were just trying to hide it from the revenue? Del stiffened, but kept his business smile. Jealousy is a terrible thing. Herman, some of us believe in giving back. Not that you'd know anything about that, unless it's giving back a faulty Mercedes. The night went well until a man in a gray suit approached Del during the reception. He didn't look like a philanthropist. He looked like he ate balance sheets for breakfast. Mr. Trotter, I'm Mr. Henderson from the Inland Revenue, the man said, pulling out a notebook. We've been following your recent charitable activities. Very noble. However, we need to discuss how a bankrupt individual manages to dispose of 50,000 pounds without first satisfying his creditors. Del's eyes darted toward the exit. Ah, Mr. Henderson, Bonjour. You see, that money wasn't mine to give. It was a corporate donation from Trotter's independent traders, under the new management of my brother, Rodney. I'm just a lowly consultant. Rodney, who had been trying to hide behind a potted palm, was dragged into the conversation. Managing Director Rodney Trotter at your service. And yes, all transactions are strictly compliant with the Peckham Accord. The Peckham Accord. Henderson blinked. There is no such legal framework. It's a very recent development, Dell added quickly. Very exclusive. Now, if you'll excuse us, I think I hear the buffet calling. Bon appetit. Chapter 15, The Translator Fiasco. A few days later, the buy now, pay later deal with Monkey Harris came to fruition. 100 boxes of Trotter Talk electronic translators were delivered to the flat. These are going to fly off the shelves, Rodney, Dell shouted, opening a box. 10 languages. Voice recognition. It even does a bit of Latin for the churchgoers. Rodney picked one up. It was a flimsy piece of plastic with a screen that flickered ominously. Dell, these look like they were made in a shed. And what's this button for? Cockney to Cantonese. A niche market. Rodney, think of the cultural exchange. They set up a stall in the market the next morning. Dell was in his element, his voice projecting across the crowded square. Gather round. Gather round. Ever been to Paris and couldn't find the toilets? Ever been to Rome and ordered a horse when you wanted a house? The Trotter Talk is here to save your holiday. A group of Japanese tourists, looking somewhat confused by the local architecture, approached the stall. Dell immediately pounced. Ah, sayonara. Looking for the secrets of London, this little beauty will tell you everything. He turned on a device and spoke into it. Where is the nearest pub? The device word clicked and then shrieked in a voice that sounded remarkably like a cat being stepped on. Your uncle has a wooden leg in Shanghai. The tourists backed away slowly. Technical hitch, Dell shouted, frantically pressing buttons. It's still adjusting to the local atmosphere. Rodney, check the settings. Rodney looked at the back of the device. Dell, it says here manufactured by the blind weavers of Outer Mongolia. I think the language chips might be a bit creative. Creative. It's a feature, Dell insisted. It's a language learning tool. It makes you think. By the end of the day, they had sold exactly 0 translators. Even Trigger, who usually bought anything Dell offered, turned it down. I don't need to speak Mongolian. Dell, I can't even speak proper English half the time. Chapter 16, The Bank Job Revisited. While the market hustle was failing, Cassandra had managed to secure an interview for her old position at the bank. It was a crucial moment for the family's stability. I need this to work, Rodney, Cassandra said as she adjusted her suit. If I get this job, We can finally start looking at our own place. We can't stay in this flat forever with Damien and your brother's charcoal-infused toasters. I know, Cass, Rodney said, feeling a pang of guilt. And don't worry, the MD of Tit is here to support you. Please don't call a tit in front of the bank manager, she pleaded. The interview was going well until Rodney decided to drop in to show his support. He arrived at the bank wearing a pinstriped suit he'd borrowed from Boyke, which was also too big, and carrying his second-hand briefcase. "Good morning," Rodney announced to the receptionist. "I'm here to see Mrs. Trotter. I'm her business advisor." He managed to stumble into the manager's office just as Cassandra was discussing the bank's investment portfolio. "Ah, Rodney," the manager said, looking surprised. "We were just talking about risk management." "Risk management?" Rodney boomed, trying to sound executive. "Well, as the managing director of an international trading firm, I can tell you that risk is just an opportunity wearing a mask. For instance, have you considered investing in the Mongolian language technology sector?" Cassandra buried her face in her hands. "Mr. Trotter," the manager said slowly, "we are a high street bank, not a venture capital firm for whatever it is you do." "Exactly," Rodney said, missing the sarcasm entirely. "And that's why you need a visionary like Cassandra on your team. She's been the backbone of our administrative restructuring. She's the raison d'etre of our finance department." Despite Rodney's intervention, or perhaps because the manager felt a deep sense of pity for Cassandra, she got the job. Chapter 17, The Phoenix Rising. As the weeks passed, the Trotters began to find a rhythm. They weren't millionaires, but they weren't drowning anymore. The translators were eventually sold as novelty noisemakers to a local toy shop, and Dell managed to trade a consignment of invisible ink, which was actually just lemon juice, for a working second-hand van engine. They sat on the balcony one evening, the orange glow of the Peckham streetlights reflecting in their glasses of cheap sparkling wine. "You know, Dell," Rodney said, looking out at the estate, "we might never be millionaires again." Dell looked at his brother, his eyes glinting with that familiar, undying spark. "Never say never, Rodney. Never say never. We've got the name, we've got the van, and we've got each other." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a gold-plated watch, not a Harrison, but a sturdy, reliable piece of Peckham history. "I got this for you, a symbol of the new era, Managing Director's Edition." Rodney took it, his voice thickening. "Thanks, Dell. It's Kushti." "Kushti?" Dell laughed. "It's Magnifique, my son. It's Chersbean." As the credits of their latest chapter rolled in their minds, the yellow van sat in the parking lot below, ready for whatever mystery the morning might bring. Because in the world of the Trotters, the only thing more certain than a crash was the comeback. Epilogue, the soul of Peckham. In the Nag's Head later that night, the Peckhamford raised their glasses. The news of Cassandra's job, Endel's latest engine swap, had restored the natural order of things. He's a survivor, Ardell, Sid said, wiping a glass with the same rag he'd been using for years. Yeah, Trigger nodded. I think I'll buy one of those watches. Does it tell the time in Mongolian? And in the corner, a ghost of an old man with a white beard seemed to chuckle. The Trotters were bankrupt, they were broke, and they were the laughing stock of the borough, but they were home. And in Peckham, that was worth more than £6.5 million. As the lights dimmed, Del Boy leaned over to Rodney and whispered, "Don't worry, Rotters, this time next year." "I know, Del," Rodney replied, clinking his glass. "I know." Author's note: this novelization explores the themes of family loyalty, the cyclical nature of success, and the indomitable spirit of the London working class. While the Trotters may lose their money, they never lose their raison d'etre. The Peckham Redemption, a Trotter Odyssey. Prologue: the mystery of the seasons. The yellow three-wheeled van, a Reliant Regal that had seen more repairs than the Great Wall of China, rattled through the streets of Peckham. To the casual observer, it was a motorized eyesore, a relic of a bygone era of fly pitching and suitcase trading. To Derek Del Boy Trotter, it was a chariot of destiny, a symbol of the Trotters' independent traders' empire that refused to die, even after a bankruptcy that would have leveled a small nation. "I'll fetch the suitcase from the van," Del muttered to himself, his voice a gravelly symphony of optimism and Benson and Hedges. He climbed out, adjusting his camel hair coat with the practiced grace of a man who spent half his life avoiding the taxman and the other half trying to look like a millionaire. 'Cause if you are the bestest, but you don't ask questions, then, brother, I'm your man. It was a mantra he lived by. The origins of his merchandise were often shrouded in a mystery deeper than the tides of the sea. He watched the changing seasons of Peckham from the damp gray of winter to the dusty gray of summer, and wondered why he was the only one driving himself berserk. Why did only fools and horses work? The question hung in the air like the scent of cheap cigars and fried bread from Sid's Cafe. Chapter 1: The Inquisition. The office of Justin, a man whose suit probably cost more than the Trotters' combined liquid assets, was offensively clean. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the dust motes that dared to enter such a prestigious space. It was the kind of office where people discussed portfolios and dividends, words that Del liked to use even if he wasn't entirely sure where the commas went. Rodney Trotter sat on the edge of a designer chair, looking like a man awaiting a firing squad. He adjusted his tie for the 14th time, his long legs folded uncomfortably. "What's up with you, Rodney?" Del whispered, leaning back with a practiced air of nonchalance that fooled absolutely no one. I'm a bit nervous, that's all, Rodney hissed back. I mean, this bloke we're going to see, this Justin, he's not going to be asking me anything about my private life, that sort of thing, is he? Dell waved a ring-encrusted hand dismissively. Of course he ain't. We're not that private, are we? He's not going to want to know about you and Cassandra's little problems. Rodney's head snapped toward his brother. What problems? Me and Cassandra haven't got any problems. That's not what you said to me the other night, Dell countered, a predatory glint in his eye. All right, so there's been one or two minor hiccups in the bedroom department, Rodney conceded, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. But they're personal, and I told you in confidence. Dell smirked, adjusting his signet ring. All right, keep your hair on. I'm not going to be telling him about jiffins and things, and I won't tell him what Cassandra wears either. Before Rodney could articulate his growing dread, the door swung open. Justin entered, looking busy and important, clutching a leather-bound folder. Sorry to keep you waiting, Justin said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. It's been a particularly busy morning. Now, I've got all the basic details about your business career, etc. But what I'd like to do is to get an insight into the real you. How you started, how you became so successful, but more importantly, your lives and your raison d'etre. Dell nodded sagely, though the French phrase passed through his mind like a ghost through a wall. Oh, no, Laboratory Garney. I understand perfectly. Justin gestured to them both. So, in your own words and in your own time. Dell leaned forward, the storyteller taking the stage. Well, where shall I start? Justin. Well, up to a few years ago. We were just very ordinary people living. Well, very ordinary lives, weren't we, Rodney? Rodney nodded slowly, his mind drifting back to the days of one-bedroom flats and suitcase trading. And then Dell continued, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. One day I discovered an historic and almost priceless artifact, an Harrison watch. At first, we didn't know what to do with it. To begin with, we thought about donating it to the British Museum as a national treasure. Rodney cleared his throat. Yeah, and then we decided to flog it. Exactly, Dell beamed. So, before you know it, Rodders and me have come into an eye on £6.5 million. Chapter 2, The Central American Mirage. We had to start thinking about our future, Dell explained to Justin, who was scribbling notes furiously. So, we sought out this city stockbroker, and he advised us to invest in a new and vibrant venture. It was a Central American market. It was attracting massive funds from all over the world. We were making more money than a royal mint. In Dell's mind, the memories played out like a glossy travel brochure. He saw himself and Raquel, Rodney and Cassandra And young Damien, living the high life, he remembered the luxury hotels, the palm trees, and the constant thrum of Ricky Martin's Livin' La Vida Loca playing in the background. It was a time of gold-plated everything and champagne for breakfast. But even then, there were signs of the coming storm. He remembered Damien the Littlegit weeing into a hotel swimming pool from the top of a 4-meter diving board. He remembered the hollow luxury of a life without a hustle. Uncle Albert, bless him, had been living in sin with Elsie Partridge down on the coast, presumably telling her wartime stories until her ears bled. And then Joel's face darkened, just as everything seemed to be going so well. Something terrible happened. Negotiations between the Central American countries collapsed. Rodney interjected, the voice of cold reality. The market was wiped out. Nicked the lot. We'd even paid for the hotel on a credit card, which had now been withdrawn. The fall had been faster than the rise. The news hit the UK via the internet before they could even pack their bags. Suddenly, their business associates weren't returning calls. They were cast into a financial wilderness. Fortunately, Dell said, trying to regain his dignity, we come from a strong community. Our friends in Peckham were as gutted as us. Take Mike Fisher, the landlord of the Nag's Head. He invested his life savings, remortgaged the pub. And will Mr. Fisher be giving evidence? Justin asked. No, Dell sighed. He's in prison, awaiting trial. The fraud squad claims he tried to recoup his losses by embezzling the brewery. Never was a man more innocent. He confessed to everything. Dell, Rodney added helpfully. Chapter 3, The Halls of Justice. The courtroom was a cold, cavernous space that smelled of old paper and failed ambitions. Outside, the Peckham crew, Trigger, Denzel, and Sid paced the corridors like a collection of nervous suspects. For God's sake, Denzel, sit down, Albert snapped. You're wearing the marble out. I can't, Albert, can I? Denzel replied, his face a mask of anxiety. I've never been a character witness before. And you think we have? Sid grunted. I'm worried, Denzel continued. I think those made a terrible mistake, having us for his character witnesses. It's like inviting the Manson family to dinner. Trigger, staring blankly at a fire extinguisher, nodded. I'm going to tell them I hear voices. No, Trig, you're not on trial, Sid groaned. You're a character witness. I know, Trigger said simply, but I hear voices. Inside the courtroom, the legal machinery ground onward. The Trotters had lost everything. Their company-owned properties were gone. Doe's estate with the peacocks was a memory. Rodney's riverside flat was a dream. Due to my foresight, Dell told the judge some years previously I had bought another property, so at least we had somewhere to live. It's called our old flat, Rodney muttered. Nelson Mandela House. The return to the high-rise was a bitter pill. Every day brought more rows, more bad news. They thought things couldn't get worse. Chapter 4. A Farewell to the Old Sea Dog. The funeral was supposed to be a solemn occasion. A final anchors away for Uncle Albert, the man who had survived the Battle of the Baltic and countless other wartime sagas that had bored his nephews to tears. Best leave it till the hearse arrives, Dell whispered to Rodney as they stood outside the chapel. They met a woman named Marion who had cleaned for Albert. Lovely old man, she said, went on a bit. I feel bad, Dell admitted, looking at the casket, leaving him here on his own while we were off globe-trotting. He didn't even have a passport. Good job Hitler didn't find that out. They entered the chapel, joined by a man named Roland, who claimed to be related to Albert's niece. I suppose we'll all miss him in our way, Roland said, though his tone was less than reverent. I'll tell you one thing we won't miss, though. All those bloody wartime sagas. Those eyes narrowed. Actually, Roland, we used to love hearing about his past. God, he did go on, though, Roland persisted. Never bloody stopped. Dell stepped closer to the man. You've got to remember that a lot of blokes lost their lives for our liberty, just so that 50 years later, prats like you would have the freedom to knock them. All right, take it easy, Dell, Rodney cautioned. No, I'm serious, Dell said, his voice rising. I think you and I ought to go outside and have a more detailed chat. The tension was broken by the arrival of the hearse, but as the pallbearers moved past, Damien pointed a finger. Is that a Spitfire, Dad? Dell looked at the floral arrangements. Oh, we're at the wrong funeral. Chapter 5. The Bankruptcy and the Broom. Back in the flat, the reality of the court's decision finally settled. The court declared me bankrupt, Dell announced to Raquel and Cassandra. Does that mean you're going to prison? Damien asked, almost hopefully. No, Dell snapped. The Inland Revenue give you a year to pay off your debt. Then they come in and take all your goods, anything of value. So it won't affect us. Then Rodney quipped. We have got something of value, Raquel said softly. This flat, our home. Dell looked around the cramped living room. I suppose I could always look for a job. Trigger said they're recruiting down at his depot. Road sweeping. The thought of Del Boy the man, who once sold 1,000 genuine Russian watches sweeping the gutters of Peckham, was too much for Raquel to bear. I was talking about Rodney, she said. Me? Rodney stammered. Can you honestly see me pushing a broom around? It's all right, Dell said, a new plan already forming in his hyperactive mind. They give training. Dell knew he couldn't run a company while bankrupt, but Rodney was clean. Trotter's Independent Traders is no more, Dell said, performing a mournful sigh. It's Capet, dead as the emu. Unless what? Rodney asked. unless there was someone out there, someone young and enthusiastic, someone full of ideas, someone like, well, you, Rodney. Me? Rodney blinked. Legally, there is nothing to stop me taking over Trotter's independent traders. Exactly. Dell beamed. Rodney Trotter, managing director. It's got a ring to it, don't it? Chapter 6, The Sultan of Brunei. The transition to Rodney's leadership was subtle. In reality, Dell remained the architect of every scheme, while Rodney provided the clean signature for the bank. One evening, the phone rang a call that promised a return to the glory days. Trotter's independent traders, managing director Rodney Trotter speaking. Rodney said, trying to sound executive. Good evening. I am wishing to speak with managing director. A voice with a thick, unfamiliar accent replied, I am representative of the Sultan of Brunei. Rodney's eyes widened. He covered the receiver. Dell, you'll never guess who's on the phone. It's the Sultan of Brunei. Dell and Trigger leaned in, listening intently. His Highness, he would like you to fly to Brunei and be his consultant, the voice continued. Recently, His Highness bought a crappy old three-wheeled van, and he wants to know where to start it on cold mornings. Rodney's face fell. He recognized the laughter in the background. Yeah, I had you going there, didn't I? The voice changed to the familiar, mocking tones of Mickey Pierce. Oh, shove it, Mickey, just shove it. Rodney slammed the phone down. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. Dave's just had a big row with the Sultan of Brunei. Trigger noted, completely missing the joke. Chapter 7, Memory Baggage. The strain of their financial downfall was taking a toll on Rodney and Cassandra's marriage. Desperate to rekindle the fire, Rodney turned to a man's magazine, the serious kind, not the ones Dell hid under the sofa. Cass, we need to try something, Rodney said over dinner at a quiet restaurant. I've been reading about this psychological healing process. It's called fantasy therapy. Cassandra looked skeptical. Does this involve dressing up? Absolutely not. Rodney lied quickly. It's about iconoclastic autosuggestion, the subconscious rejecting reality. We become different. People to unload our memory baggage. It's about remembering to forget. All right, Cassandra sighed. I'm willing to give it a try. Good, Rodney smiled. Now, each person writes down their fantasy figure, and the other person becomes that figure for a little while. He handed her a slip of paper. She looked at it and then back at him. So am I supposed to be her? And you, Rodney said, looking at the name she wrote, you fancy him? The plan was set, but as often happened with the Trotters, the line between fantasy and a police report was dangerously thin. Chapter 8, The Gladiator and the Law. A few nights later, the Trotter flat was the site of a bizarre transformation. Dell and Raquel were preparing to go out, while Rodney and Cassandra were deep in their therapeutic exercise. The door flew open, and Cassandra walked in, looking stunning in a full policewoman's uniform, handcuffs, truncheon, and a look of stern authority. "Oh, my God!" Dell jumped. "I thought you was a real policewoman. You nearly gave me a coronary." Rodney emerged from the bedroom, looking considerably less authoritative. He was wearing a leather tunic, a cape, and a helmet that was slightly too large. "And you, Rogers," Dell smirked. "Who are you supposed to be? Russell Crowe?" "Pardon?" Rodney grumbled. "Russell Crowe. You look more like Spartacus with piles." "It's a fancy dress party, Dell," Rodney said, sticking to the cover story. "My ex-boss at the bank invited us. It's an early party because people have work in the morning." Right, Dell said, ushering them toward the door. "Go on, off you go. Make a big impression. Here, you can borrow the Capri." As Rodney and Cassandra shuffled out a gladiator and a policewoman heading into the night of Peckham, Dell turned to Raquel. "You see, darling, power is an aphrodisiac." She's bubbling. Chapter 9, Gold Rush. The neon lights of the television studio were blinding. Dell stood on the stage of Gold Rush, facing Jonathan Ross and the judgmental gaze of the British public. He had lied about his pastimes, claiming an interest in 16th century Italian Renaissance art and managed to fumble his way through the preliminary rounds. "Rodney," Dell whispered into the phone, using his SOS option. "I need your help. 50,000 pounds on the line." "Who's this?" "Mickey Pierce." Rodney's voice crackled through the speaker. "It's Jonathan Ross." "Rodney," the host shouted, "we need an answer. Which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and The Enchantment? Was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo?" Rodney, sitting in the flat in his pajamas, felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Ravel. 100% Dell." Dell turned back to Jonathan Ross, a confident smirk on his face. "I'll go with that. It's Ravel." The silence in the studio was deafening. "Derek," Jonathan said softly. "That was the wrong answer. It was Segovia." The world seemed to collapse. Dell was frozen out. He returned home to a flat filled with disappointment. "I was certain," Rodney moaned. "I could have sworn it was Ravel." "Ravel makes shoes, you dipstick," Dell exploded, though he himself hadn't known the answer 10 minutes prior. Chapter 10, The Last Laugh. The phone rang. Raquel answered it. "Dell, it's the producer of Gold Rush." Dell took the phone, his heart hammering. "Hello. Yes. What?" His face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions. "He said there's been a mistake. It was Ravel. I've won the 50 grand. The room erupted. Cheers, hugs, and the clinking of glasses. For a fleeting second, the glory was back. The Trotters were once again the masters of their domain. But then, a familiar sound drifted through the receiver. The distinct clink of a jukebox from the Nag's Head. Bloody Mickey Pierce, Dell screamed, slamming the phone down. I'm going to move. I'm going to kick his arse into shredded duck. As the laughter of his family filled the room, Dell looked at the empty glass in his hand. He looked at Rodney, who was still trying to explain why he thought a shoe manufacturer wrote operas. He looked at Raquel, who was laughing in spite of their poverty. He realized that while the money was gone, the hustle remained. The spirit of the Trotters was not in the millions, but in the relentless, ridiculous hope that the next phone call, the next suitcase, or the next game show would be the one. He adjusted his gold chain, took a deep breath, and looked at his brother. Don't worry, Rotters, Dell said, the old fire returning to his eyes. This time next year, we'll be millionaires. Chapter 11, The Morning After the Storm. The morning sun filtered through the cracked blinds of Nelson Mandela House, illuminating the dust that had settled on the velvet curtains. Del Boy sat at the kitchen table, staring at a bowl of soggy cornflakes as if they held the secrets of the universe. The millionaire high of the previous night had evaporated, replaced by the dull ache of the Inland Revenue's impending visit. Rodney, have you seen the Post? Del shouted toward the hallway. Rodney stumbled in, rubbing his eyes, wearing a dressing gown that looked like it had been salvaged from a skip in the late 80s. It's all final demands. Del, and one from the bank asking if I'd like to consolidate my debts. I didn't know you could consolidate nothing into even more nothing. Don't be like that, Rotters, Dell said, brightening. We're under new management now. Your management. I've been thinking. We need a hook. Something to get the cash flowing while we wait for the taxman to forget where we live. Dell, we owe 50,000 pounds, Rodney sighed, sitting down. The taxman isn't going to forget. He's probably got a sat-nav pointed directly at this flat. Listen to me. Dell leaned in, his voice dropping to that conspiratorial tone that usually preceded a disaster. I was talking to a bloke down the market yesterday. He's got a pallet of smart toothbrushes. They connect to your phone and tell you if you're brushing too hard. Smart toothbrushes. Rodney looked skeptical. Dell, people in Peckham are lucky if they've got their own teeth, let alone a brush that talks to their mobile. No, you're missing the point. These are the Luxor 5000 models. They've got a slight defect. The Bluetooth signal is so strong it occasionally opens garage doors. Imagine the market. We sell them as high-tech security devices that also keep your breath mini fresh. It's a niche market. Rodney groaned, burying his face in his hands. Under new management. I should have known new management just meant same old rubbish, different signature. Chapter 12, The Nag's Head Philosophy. Later evening, the air in the Nag's Head was thick with the smell of stale beer and the low hum of Trigger's internal monologues. Sid was behind the bar. wiping a glass with a cloth that looked like it had been used to clean an oil spill. "All right, Dave," Trigger said, nodding at Rodney as the brothers walked in. "It's Rodney. Trig, you've known me my whole life," Rodney corrected for the 10,000th time. "I know, Dave. Just keeping you on your toes," Trigger replied with a blank stare. Dell leaned against the bar, ordering 2 halves of lager and a large cognac for the nerves. "So, Trig, how's the depot? Still recruiting?" "Yeah, Dell, they need a new man for the night shift. It's peaceful. Just you, the broom, and the voices," Trigger said solemnly. "Voices?" Rodney asked, leaning in. "What voices?" "Trig, the ones that tell me where the leaves are hiding," Trigger said. "They're very helpful. Sometimes they even sing." Dell cleared his throat, moving the conversation along. "Right. Well, I was telling Rodney here. We're looking to expand our horizons. Diversify. We're in the tech sector now." "Tech?" Sid chimed in. "I thought you were in the bankrupt sector." Dell. "Temporary setback," Sid. "A mere glitch in the matrix," Dell declared, raising his glass. "To Trotter's independent traders. Now with added Rodney." Denzel walked in, looking more harassed than usual. "Dell, have you seen the papers? There's a story about a 3-wheeled van seen speeding away from a fancy dress party. They say the driver looked like a gladiator and the passenger was a policewoman." Rodney froze, his glass halfway to his mouth. Cassandra, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, suddenly found her drink very interesting. "Publicity, Rodney. That's what that is," Dell whispered. "They're calling you a hero, a gladiator of the people." "They're calling me a public nuisance, Dell," Rodney hissed back. Chapter 13, The High Priest of High-Value Assets. The afternoon silence of the Trotter flat was broken by a sharp, rhythmic tapping on the door. It wasn't the heavy-handed thud of the debt collector, nor the tentative scratch of Trigger. It was the assertive, slightly condescending knock of a man who owned a Mercedes and a villa in Spain. Boyke stood in the doorway, exhaling a plume of cigar smoke that smelled of arrogance and aged tobacco. Marlene stood behind him, adjusting her leopard print coat and looking at the wallpaper with a pitying expression. "All right, Dell," Boyke said, his voice a nasal drone that set Rodney's teeth on edge. "I heard the news. Bankrupt. A tragic end to A. Well, I'd say stellar career, but that would be lying, wouldn't it?" He let out his trademark laugh a dry, hacking sound that resembled a cold engine trying to start. "Come in, Boyke, Marlene. Take a seat," Dell said, trying to maintain his dignity while hiding a stack of final demands under a cushion. "It's just a temporary cash flow situation. We're restructuring." "Restructuring," Boyke sneered, sitting on the edge of the sofa as if afraid he'd catch poverty. "Is that what they're calling losing $6.5 million these days?" I've seen more financial stability in a game of Monopoly. We're diversifying, Boyke, Rodney interjected, puffing out his chest. As the new managing director, I've taken the firm into the technology sector. Marlene looked at Rodney, her eyes widening. Technology. Does that mean you've finally learned how to use the microwave, Rodney? Boyke chuckled, tapping ash onto the carpet. Listen, Del, I'm a man of business. I don't like to see an old associate in the gutter. I might have an opening for a driver. Nothing fancy. Just moving some high-value stock between warehouses. Quietly. Those eyes flickered. High value, eh? What kind of stock? Let's just say they're unrecorded luxury items, Boyke said with a wink. Interested? Del looked at Rodney, then back at Boyke. The old hustle was calling. But before he could answer, a loud, electronic beep echoed from the kitchen. Chapter 14, The Garage Door Symphony. What was that? Boyke asked, his eyebrows shooting up. Oh, that's just the future, Del said, sweating. Suddenly, the street outside was filled with the sound of grinding metal. Looking out the window, Del saw the neighbor's garage door slowly rising, then the one next to it, then the one across the street. It was a wave of synchronized automation. Inside the kitchen, Rodney found the source. A pallet of Luxor 5000 smart toothbrushes had arrived, and one of them had activated in the box. Its Bluetooth signal was indeed very wrecked strong. Del, Rodney yelled, the toothbrushes. They're opening everything. Boyke stood up, looking out the window. Is that old Mrs. Gribble's garage? Why is her lawnmower coming out to greet the world? Publicity. Boyke. Del shouted over the noise. It's a demonstration. The Luxor 5000. It's so powerful, it doesn't just clean your teeth. It cleans up the whole neighborhood. Marlene began to laugh a high-pitched, infectious sound. Boyke, however, looked horrified as his own Mercedes, parked outside, began to unlock and lock its doors in rapid succession. Click-clack, click-clack. My car, Del, what have you done to my car? Boyke screamed, rushing for the door. It's the security feature, Del yelled after him. It's checking for intruders. It's state-of-the-art. As Boyke and Marlene fled the flat, Rodney stood amidst the boxes of vibrating toothbrushes. Managing director, he muttered, I'm the managing director of a haunted electronics warehouse. Chapter 15, A Toast to Tomorrow. As the sun set over Peckham, casting long, orange shadows across Nelson Mandela House, the chaos subsided. The toothbrushes had been deactivated mostly, and the garage doors had been manually shut by a collection of very confused neighbors. Del and Rodney sat on the balcony, looking out over the flickering lights of the city. In the distance, the silhouette of the Nag's Head was a beacon of normality. You know, Rotters, Del said, taking a sip of a questionable brand of sparkling wine. Oiki might have been right about one thing. We've had a bit of a tumble. A tumble? Rodney asked. We fell off a skyscraper and landed in a bucket of manure. Yeah, but look at the manure, Dell said, ever the optimist. It's good for the roses. We're back where we started. Yeah, just you and me, and Raquel and Cassandra, and the little git. He put an arm around his brother's shoulder. We've got our health, we've got our wits, and we've got a palette of toothbrushes that can control the local infrastructure. That's more than most people have. I suppose so, Rodney admitted. We're trotters, Rodney. We don't stay down. We're like those inflatable dolls with the weights in the bottom. You hit us. We bounce back, usually with a slightly better story. He raised his glass to the future, to the millions, and to the fact that you still haven't pushed that broom. Rodney smiled, clinking his glass against us, to the future. As they sat there in the cool night air, the spirit of the trotters felt unshakable. They were bankrupt in the eyes of the law, but in the heart of Peckham, they were legends. And somewhere, perhaps, Uncle Albert was looking down, nursing a rum and getting ready to tell a story about a battle he almost certainly wasn't in. Rotters. Yeah, Dell. This time next year. I know. Dell, Rodney said, his voice filled with a familiar, ridiculous hope. Millionaires. Fools and Fortunes, the Peckham Reversal. Chapter 1, The Inquisition of Derek Trotter. The sky over London hung low and gray, the color of a cheap tin ashtray, weeping a fine drizzle that clung to the windows of the bankruptcy tribunal. Inside, the air was stifling, smelling faintly of old paper, floor wax, and the cold sweat of ruined men. Rodney Trotter sat in the stiff-backed waiting room chair, his long limbs folded awkwardly, his knees bouncing with a nervous, rhythmic energy. He looked like a heron that had accidentally wandered into a boardroom. Beside him sat his older brother, Derek, Del Boy to his friends. Sir to the maitre d's of Mayfair at least, until recently. Del adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke camel hair coat, a lingering relic of a fortune that had vanished like smoke in a hurricane. He radiated an aura of forced invincibility, a sharp contrast to Rodney's visible unraveling. I'll fetch the suitcase from the van, Del muttered, half to himself, glancing at the frosted glass door of the inner office. He hummed a tuneless melody, projecting a bravado that fooled neither of them. Rodney wiped his damp palms on his trousers. What's up with you, Rodney? Del asked, finally noticing his brother's pallor. I'm a bit nervous, that's all, Rodney confessed, his voice a low, reedy whisper. I mean, this bloke we're going to see, this Justin, he's not going to be asking me anything about my private life, that sort of thing, is he? Del scoffed, flashing a gold sovereign ring that the bailiffs had somehow missed. Of course he ain't. We're not that private. He's not going to want to know about you and Cassandra's little problems, Del added, a teasing glint in his eye. Rodney stood up, his head snapping toward his brother. No, no. Good, 'cause otherwise I would. Wait, what problems? Me and Cassandra haven't got any problems. Del leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that echoed loudly in the quiet room. That's not what you said to me the other night. All right, Rodney hissed, his face flushing a sudden, violent crimson. So there's been 1 or 2 minor hiccups in the bedroom department, but they're personal, and I told you in confidence, under the strictest brotherly privilege, Del. All right, keep your hair on, Del placated, adjusting his silk tie. I'm not going to be telling him about chiffons and things. And I won't tell him what Cassandra wears, either. Before Rodney could formulate a sufficiently scathing reply, the frosted glass door creaked open. A thin, pallid man with a clipboard and spectacles that seemed to magnify the utter lack of joy in his eyes stepped out. Justin. Sorry to keep you waiting, Justin said, his voice entirely devoid of sorrow. It's been a particularly busy morning. Please, come in. They followed Justin into an office that felt smaller than a prison cell. It was lined with filing cabinets containing the shattered dreams of 1,000 small businessmen. Justin sat behind a heavy oak desk, gesturing for the brothers to take the 2 meager chairs opposite him. Now, Justin began, lacing his fingers together. I've got all the basic details about your business career, etc. But what I'd like to do is to get an insight into the real you, how you started, how you became so successful, but more importantly, your lives and your raison d'etre.